Welcome back to our continued coverage of the Inland Off-Road Championship Series, round number 4, the Stella 250, a classic race venue, and already it's starting to get a little bit tense. With the prologue done and dusted, all the crews were lined up in their qualifying positions. And remember, with the Inland Off-Road Championship, it is true racing. In other words, from the flag drop to the flag drop, whoever crosses the line at the end is the winner. Nothing to be worked out on corrected timing. So all the racing had to now be done on 2 racing loops of 90 kilometers. There's a lot of championships that are getting close to being wrapped up, but everyone at the end of the day simply wants to bring it home and survive the day's event. A very interesting layout for the track as well, and running close to Vryburg meant it was going to have a bit of a desert field. The rains have not arrived up in the northwest as yet, meaning it was going to be bone dry and dusty. Rains would have definitely helped in this kind of terrain. For traction, also to try and keep that extra heat down. Vryburg and the area around Stella do get seriously warm at this stage of the season. With all the categories running from the special vehicles, production vehicles and side-by-sides making up an incredible grid, we were guaranteed to have some spectacular racing. 1 or 2 people though definitely wanted to turn their seasons around, and other crews simply wanted to get that first victory under their belt that they've been chasing the whole way through the tour. For the Mostards, it was all about turning their season around as well and trying to get rid of that bad luck. For our Penta motor group, it was just to have a clean run. They showed what they could do in their Nissan Navara at the previous round before a small rollover cost them their result. Shortened championship as well, losing all those months from the middle of the season, meaning it was going to be a tighter championship with less mistakes to be able to be absorbed in anyone's championship tour. 2020 would always be known as the Lockdown Racing Championship. By no means would it be known as the Easy Championship. Whoever walked away with the number 1s in categories and classes were going to be deserved champions come the end of the 2020 Inland Off-Road Championship racing season. Brought to you by Ural Trucks and Fila Africa. As one by one the crews went out of the start line, it was going to be interesting to see how they adapted to the big loop of racing 2 huge 90 kilometers. Some of the crews that had their big problems in the prologue were going to be starting way back, and they would be ploughing the field. We so often see this in our entries at the Inland Off-Road Championship. Something goes wrong in the prologue, you've got to fight through the traffic, through the dust, to be able to see a championship. After incurring a loose bonnet clip in the prologue and subsequently the bonnet flew open and broke the windscreen, TG and SW were still up for the challenge, but unfortunately with 15 kilometers to go before the end of the first racing loop in the main race, mechanical issues hit them and the motor cried enough. That was their day done. For the E19 crew, after fixing the brakes, remember they did the prologue with 0 brakes, managing to somehow survive the first loop, was dispatched with no issues to report for Manu and Peter. Shortly into the second loop though, and the final loop of the day, their steering broke and they were then forced out of the race. They joined the first of many crews to fall by the wayside. The often unstoppable D4 in the hands of Hein Kruger and Albertus Fenter were in good spirits after the qualifying that went well in the Hindcore Hilux. Their elation though was short-lived as they lost four-wheel drive about 40 kilometers into the main race, and then the engine started to overheat and cook, and that put them unfortunately out of the race before the engine could say thus far and no further. First of the problems coming in for the side-by-side G-Class, the G12, ripping off the wheel and suspension bits was not what LD Erasmus and Andre Geldenes had in mind, but that was their race done, and the DNF recorded Christine Viviers and Peter van der Merwe, they had a ball of a time. They were going well, settling into a rhythm right from the start, and the Ford Ranger was well suited to the terrain. But off-road racing is a cruel mistress, and the 3.2 twin-turbo diesel motor cried no more and put the crew to the sideline, joining the retirements. The unforgiving terrain and relentless heat were causing major engine issues across all categories. A broken front prop shaft 10 kilometers into the prologue didn't do them any favors. Tackling the race in rear-wheel drive only, Peter Fourie and Keith Smith were going great guns in the first loop, only to have a shock break off the rear suspension. Roadside repairs got them going once again, but when a second shock broke on the same side, causing the diff to move, which in turn caused the prop shaft to rub against the fuel tank and puncture it, and that was it. Race over. Just a catalogue of knock-on effects, eventually causing the eventual retirement. Francois and Gerry's return to racing, unfortunately this time around, was short-lived, courtesy of a broken ball joint on the front suspension, which reduced them to spectators rather than racers. But rest assured, they will be back, unless, of course, someone buys their bucky in the meantime. Classic Stella 250 shot, long, sandy, dusty trails as far as the eye can see. The course was laid out absolutely perfectly, not too many lurkers this time around, and an area that has been raced on many times for the last couple of years just showed that it is getting better with age. The Stella 250 will live on. In the B class, racing together with B1 was the plan, and it all went well, even when the girls in B1 got a puncher. But then, overheating problems befell Sophie van Schalkwyk and Arthur Croshaw in their B2 entry, and they finally lost more than 20 minutes, handing the victory in the class to the wives. Wasn't that nice of them? The B class often race together, running in the same 30 seconds sometimes. This time around, the B2 had to bow out, giving it to the girls. With the husbands in B2 riding shotgun, Colleen Croshaw and Marina van Schalkwyk made good progress until they picked up a puncher. But it was soon back underway, and with the husbands eventually falling foul to overheating problems, the Class B victory was theirs for the taking. And with that, once again, the family bragging rights for the short drive home. For the ladies in the B1, it was starting to look very much like a class championship was on the cards. Steady going, not without their fair share of problems though, did see Swaits Moret and Jacques Leroux eventually make it to the finish. Smiles all round though, as they clinched a podium finish in Class E. Third place was well deserved after more than 4 hours of racing in an absolute bone shaker of a Class E production vehicle bucky. So is the way with many of our Inland Off-Road Championship Series events. Survival is key. Bring it home. And more often than not, you will make your way onto the podium. 2 races and 2 finishes. It might be early days for the rookies Philip Buerta and Roelof Janse van Vuren in the Penta Motor Group in this Navarra. But kicking off your off-road racing career this way is the stuff dreams are truly made of. Over time and with more experience, speed will come. And no doubt, close after that will be podium finishes in the not too distant future. The Penta Motor Group pairing are gelling very nicely, thank you very much, with the Redline Motorsport prepped in this Navarra. The electrical problem encountered in the prologue by Wayne Smith and Hendrik Rutt in the Speedy Tyre and 4x4 Hilux was dealt with, and they set off in the main race full of hope, expectation and confidence. The Hilux decided differently though and kept on going into limp mode, necessitating many stops to try and remedy it. Crossing the finish line in a well-deserved second place in Class E was just reward for their efforts, and they were there, full of smiles, come the end of play, even though they had truly been through the mill throughout the afternoon's main event. For the G2s with body panels flapping, despite many hassles along the way as well. Freiburger's Christo Rose and Arno Olivier pushed on through in the main race and made it to the finish in a very respectable and points-gathering 4th place in the Class G side-by-sides. It really has become a theme of the Inland Off-Road Championship season in 2020. Bring it home, make it to the finish line no matter what, and you will be rewarded. After issues in the prologue, no more troubles in the main race after their slight issues in the morning session meant a trouble-free run for Lawrence van Veek and Peter Visser, grabbing the bottom step of the Class D podium. 3rd was not to be sneered at. A good job for them and turning their day around nicely in the D1. For the F8 crew, continuing on their good form and a 100% finishing record, father and son Oki and Jandre Kruger added another class win to their tally for the year. The route definitely suited them, as they were able to push hard the whole way through and simply enjoy their day racing out there in the F8. One happy checkered flag there. Also for the E5, running perfect form. The entry of Johan Visser and Jerry Besson ended off the Stella 250 with another class victory to keep them on top of the overall production championship standings, as well as the top of Class E, with just a couple of rounds to go to wrap up 2020. For G15, it certainly wasn't an easy day. With broken drive belts hampering their progress, Hanno Bierman and Peter de Beer drove as hard as they could, but the time lost proved too much at the end, and they had to settle for a still very respectable 3rd place in Class G, but they'd have been hoping for the top step once again. The speed is and always will be there with this pairing, but mechanicals do tend to dog them and hold them back. Join us off the break to see who rose to the top of the pile at the Stella 250.